Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And if you didn't see the Donald Trump Vladimir Zelensky press conference today, it got heated. It was an episode of Jerry Springer. And other than that, we got former FBI Director James Comey hiding Epstein files. But first, the intelligent Nat in Spanish.
En español, así es. Espérenme. Estoy escuchando algo que no debería escuchar. Buenas noches a todos. Ya es viernes por fin. Si están en la Ciudad de México, está llueve. Y espero que los que estén por acá hayan tenido muy buena semana. También parece que hubo sismo, pero pues ni se prendieron las alertas sísmicas en la Ciudad de México. Espero que todos bien, de todas maneras. Y así es, como decía Guy, la primera noticia es que pues se juntaron el señor Zelensky y el señor Donald Trump en la Casa Blanca para pues discutir un acuerdo o algo, o llegar a algún tipo de entendimiento, porque sabemos que estos dos hombres no son fans los unos de los otros y pues hubieron explosiones metafóricas, porque Trump echa a Zelensky de la Casa Blanca, puede volver cuando esté preparado para la paz, reclama el presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, aseguró que sin su ayuda militar, la guerra entre Ucrania y Rusia terminaría en 2 semanas. Y no se sabe si sí o si no, pero hay como un trasfondo que la gente como que no, por lo menos de aquí a nivel político, obviamente con la tendencia clara que tiene, no han realmente hablado sobre todo el acuerdo y todo lo que pasó antes y después de la conferencia bastante estrambótica que hubo en la Casa Blanca, porque estuvieron hablando 40 minutos antes de que pasaran todos los del griterío que empezó después entre los periodistas y Donald Trump y Zelensky y J.D. Vance, el vicepresidente, y todos los demás que estaban ahí. Los 40 minutos fueron bastante cordiales antes de que empezaran a hacer preguntas más incendiarias, pues. Y lo que estaban tratando de discutir era tratar de llegar a algún tipo de acuerdo, ahora que Donald Trump también está hablando con Rusia, con Putin, que fue algo que Biden nunca hizo, o bueno, que se negaba a hacer y nada más mandaba gente a que fueran a hablar con él, pero sin tratar de realmente llegar a una resolución. Y es porque una de las promesas de campaña de Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, etcétera, era pues terminar con todas las guerras, no solo la de Ucrania, pero todas las guerras. Y hay bastantes personas que pues digamos que tienen interés en que las guerras continúen porque pues generan dinero, en especial porque sin Estados Unidos y las armas y todo el apoyo que le dan a Ucrania, en este caso, no podrían seguir haciendo el dinero que hacen, por ejemplo, porque hay varios senadores y gente en el Congreso que está también involucrado o que tiene algún tipo de beneficio por parte de todas las compañías que hacen las armas que luego se envían a Ucrania. Entonces, pues el hecho de que Zelensky no estuviera de acuerdo con nada de lo que se le estaba planteando, ni tratar de llegar a un acuerdo de paz, en mi opinión, habla más de él y los intereses que hay por parte de Ucrania que del comportamiento malo de Donald Trump o de los periodistas que estaban ahí. Por ejemplo, los que le preguntaron, pues, ¿por qué andas vestido así? ¿Por qué no puedes mostrar un poco de respeto por la Casa Blanca y la oficina en la que estás y ponerte un traje? A lo cual, pues, mucha gente dice, bueno, pero es que está en guerra. Pero, pues, todos sabemos que este señor, el presidente Zelensky, es un actor y su primer oficio o su primer trabajo fue como actor. Y muy parecido a Justin Trudeau, les encanta andar de dramáticos. ¿Por qué? Porque el señor llegó en un jet privado. Sí, anda en guerra, pero estoy segura de que sí tiene algún trajecito por ahí y lo hace para demostrar que, pues, ay, pobres de nosotros, me tengo que vestir como si yo también fuera soldado porque apoyo, etcétera. Y no importa lo que piensen o a quién le vayan en todo el desastre de la guerra entre Rusia y Ucrania, el caso es que el acuerdo en el que estaban tratando de acordar o el que estaban tratando de llegar era que Ucrania empezara a cederle sus recursos naturales y que se usara el apoyo de Estados Unidos porque ellos no tienen los implementos y la tecnología necesaria para poder sacar estos recursos naturales y de otras índoles de Ucrania ellos mismos, ellos no lo podrían hacer. Entonces, el acuerdo en el que estaban tratando de llegar es que Estados Unidos les ayudara y se quedaran con un poco de lo que se sacara de dinero, de todos esos recursos con los que les iban a apoyar con los que los iban a apoyar a sacar de la tierra y con la tecnología pues, de Estados Unidos, y así recuperar un poco de la inversión que se ha hecho por parte de Estados Unidos en Ucrania durante pues, que empezó la guerra. Y este acuerdo, que es algo que mucha gente ya no está hablando, no está recalcando sobre cómo salió a la luz o cómo empezaron a hablar sobre este acuerdo, fue porque Zelensky fue algo que el presidente de Ucrania le había sugerido al presidente Biden cuando seguía siendo presidente, y no se había llegado a un acuerdo, no se habían realmente puesto las cartas sobre la mesa, y esto era lo que venía a tratar de hacer, pero al final pues dijeron ambas partes como, bueno, Trump, si no te vas a portar bien y no quieres llegar a la paz, pues vete. Y Zelensky, pues si no me siguen apoyando y dando dinero para poder proteger pues mi lado y lo que sí nos corresponde a su visto, entonces tampoco podemos llegar a un acuerdo, y lo terminó básicamente echando de la Casa Blanca. Se suponía que iban a hacer una conferencia de prensa después de su junta, ya tampoco se hizo. Y pues, o sea, sí, aquí dicen empezó bien, pero terminaron sin firmarlo, del acceso de Estados Unidos a minerales ucranianos, y también se fueron sin la rueda de prensa. Y Trump, que presume de su cercanía con su homólogo ruso Vladimir Putin, que es la persona a la que todo el mundo le teme, le dio un apretón de manos antes de bromear sobre su atuendo estilo militar. Y pues exactamente es en parte una estrategia política para decirle por qué andas haciéndole como si fueras un soldado más cuando estás llegando a una oficina externa a tu país y donde deberías de estar un poco más presentable. Tuvieron varias personas que estuvieron de acuerdo con lo que hizo Trump, otras que estuvieron de acuerdo con lo que hizo Zelensky, pero al final del día pues no llegaron a ningún tipo de acuerdo, y la junta no empezó siendo tan... no empezó con tanto caos. Entonces ya llevaban 40 minutos hablando sobre todos estos temas antes de que subieran las tensiones, porque ningún lado estaba llegando a ningún tipo de acuerdo y nada más le andaban dando vueltas y vueltas al asunto. Y si no lo han visto completo y tienen opiniones encontradas, entonces diría, vean todo el segmento, que son como 50 minutos completo, antes de formar opiniones. Voy a leer rápido ahorita en pausa y ahorita voy a la siguiente noticia. Jacobo Contreras Velázquez dice, podré estar en desacuerdo con Zelensky, pero el señor Trump fue muy grosero y de nueva cuenta al futuro presidente de Estados Unidos le tocará restaurar las relaciones cordiales con el resto del mundo. Y pues, o sea, sí fue grosero, pero también nadie nunca le había puesto un alto, y también Estados Unidos le ha dado tantos y tantos recursos, dinero, etcétera, que pues en parte también, si se está tratando de llegar a un acuerdo y nada más dice denme más dinero, pues alguien tenía que llegar y decirle, a ver, ya te hemos dado todo esto, tú qué estás, o sea, qué parte o qué estás, qué postura estás jugando y en qué estás de acuerdo en tratar de llegar, cuál sería el punto en el que estarías de acuerdo para poder ya dejar de que se sigan desviviendo personas nada más porque sí, en una guerra pues que ya no hay mucha forma en la que puedan ganar Ucrania sin el apoyo masivo que le estaba dando Estados Unidos, y cuyos recursos muchas de las personas que votaron por Donald Trump estaban esperando que pues se regresen y se dejen de gastar en una guerra en la que pues Estados Unidos al principio, pues ¿para qué está metido? ¿Para qué se meten? ¿Y para qué nada más le dan tanto a un lado en vez de al otro? Obviamente hay intereses mucho más profundos, en especial porque el hecho de que se estaba planeando poner una base por parte de NATO o OTAN en el borde de Ucrania con Rusia, que estaría ya básicamente al ladito de Rusia, y pues sí, pues ahí se armaron las tensiones también. Hay una historia muy larga detrás y el experto en esto es Guy, entonces obviamente él va a hablar mucho más sobre pues la guerra y etcétera, y ya me voy a la siguiente historia antes de seguir hablando. Y HSS Hablando Sin Saber dice, hola, te conocí por una alienada, eres bien, no sé si puedo decir esa palabra, pero CHI, Ngona. Muchas gracias, y sigo agradeciéndole a una alienada. yo sigo diciendo, soy materia dispuesta, si algún día quiere venir al canal o quiere hablar o quiere hacer algún tipo de colaboración, estaría súper dispuesta y pues siempre he sido suscriptora suya y la llevo viendo desde hace rato. Y Carlos García dice... Bueno, este lo leo en inglés porque lo mando en inglés. Ahorita lo leo con Guy. Y pasando a otra noticia que no tiene nada que ver, Kathleen Kennedy, y esto es por parte de That Park Place, pero lo traduje al español. Kathleen Kennedy, que ayer o antier dijimos que parecía que ya iba a salir de Star Wars y dejar de arruinarle los sueños a todos los fans de Star Wars, pues parece que ahora dijo que no y que su plan es seguir arruinando Star Wars para todos los fans de todas las edades hasta que deje de estar en esta tierra. Básicamente van a tener más películas malas y van a seguir destruyendo todo el canon de Star Wars hasta que esta mujer deje de estar en la tierra, porque dijo en una entrevista de Deadline afirmando que no se irá pronto y va a seguir haciendo películas hasta que la vida ya no la deje. Entonces, That Park Place dice, después de semanas de especulaciones sobre Kathleen Kennedy y su rumoreado retiro de Lucasfilm, Deadline ha publicado ahora una entrevista exclusiva en la que Kennedy niega rotundamente que se va pronto. También vimos que hubieron tensiones entre varios reporteros que habían empezado a pues, sacar esta noticia y parece que alguien les estaba diciendo como, no, shh, cállense, todavía no hay que estar sacando estas noticias. Empezaron a pelear entre sí, el reportero de PAC contra otros reporteros por parte también, bueno, con conexiones a Disney. Entonces, pues todos los fans de Star Wars, lo siento mucho, van a seguir viendo mujeres empoderadas en pantalla con historias que no hacen sentido y que completamente ignoran varios partes del canon de la saga de Star Wars. Entonces, nada más quería no corregir, pero dar un poco más sobre la historia que ya con la que llevamos cargando bastante tiempo. Y por último, pues los Oscars van a pasar este siguiente domingo. Ya había dicho que parece que Carlos Sofía Gascón, esta persona muy polémica y que pues estuvo en la película, una de las películas ahora sí más polémicas y groseras con México, y su director también muy grosero con pues cualquier persona que hable español, sí se va a ir a parar y sí le va a pagar Netflix para irse a parar a los Oscars, al Dolby Theater en Los Ángeles. Va a ser a me parece que 4 o 5 de la tarde de la Ciudad de México. Sí había checado y ya se me borró de la cabeza, pero si lo quieren ver, si les interesa, pues véanlo. Va a estar curioso ver más bien como todo el chisme de qué va a pasar con todo pues, el elenco y el director de Emilia Pérez, porque ahora sí andan todos peleados y no se pueden ni ver la cara. Ya se denunciaron los unos a los otros, ya dijeron como que no apoyan X comentarios y que no apoyan el otro. La pobre de Zoe Saldaña anda que así como escondida atrás de una planta diciendo a mí ni me vean, no me pregunten nada. Pero pues sí ganó en los SAG Awards, me parece, y no sé si ganó en los Critics' Choice Awards, no lo he seguido tan a fondo porque justamente quería decir, se suponía que hoy tenía que salir mi video hablando sobre los Óscares y toda la trayectoria de diversidad, equidad e inclusión y todos los intentos por básicamente arruinar cualquier película que quisiera estar nominada a un Óscar, porque les pusieron un buen de reglas y un buen de restricciones a qué tipo de representación tiene que estar en pantalla para que se puedan siquiera pensar ganar un Óscar. Entonces ese video espero que lo pueda sacar ya sea hoy después de este en vivo o mañana, muy acorde porque los Óscares son este domingo. Entonces pues si les interesa, espérenlo, véanlo. Nuestro último video sobre la industria de la fertilidad, pues no le fue muy bien porque no es un tema que le interese a muchísima gente, pero viene conectado con los otros videos y es lo que trato de hacer. Trato de como hilar varios videos juntos para contar una historia, pero que no sea un video de 1 hora y pues termina siendo demasiada información y demasiado yo hablando y pues nadie me quiere escuchar hablando tanto tiempo. Entonces trato de condensarlos y luego juntarlos todos y hacer como una serie. Entonces esa era parte de la serie y falta también uno sobre toda la industria de los vientres en alquiler y la asquerosidad, a las varias asquerosidades que han surgido gracias a la industria de la fertilidad, y todo iba hilado junto con pues que nos estamos quedando sin bebés, que ya nadie quiere tener hijos, que no hay formas de poder tener hijos en el mundo hoy en día, no hay los tipos de apoyos que se debería de tener para las personas que sí quieren tener hijos, formar una familia y dejar un legado más allá de pues todo el trabajo que hicieron en una oficina en su juventud. Entonces, esperen el video de los Óscares y ya me voy. Espérenme que no sé qué estoy picando ahí. Ya me voy. Ahora sí, muchas gracias. Déjenme, veo, Jessica Ramírez dice: la única esperanza para Star Wars y prácticamente toda la franquicia, toda franquicia de Disney es que Disney se canse de perder dinero, que no parece que sea en un futuro cercano. Y nada más rápido digo, gran parte, y le voy a echar ahora sí la culpa a... Muchos le echan la culpa al CEO anterior, que se llama Bob Chapek, pero el verdadero, pues... el que orquestó todo esto y que le podemos ahora sí echar la culpa es Bob Iger, que regresó como CEO después de que trataron de sacar a Chapek por decir que no quería involucrar tanto a la comunidad y temas políticos en Disney. Entonces él se fue y regresó Bob Iger, que siempre estuvo ahí moviéndole a cosas, y pues sí parece que quieren seguir perdiendo dinero porque también en sus parques siguen pues no tratando de hacer que las visitas y la gente que va a los parques tenga una experiencia amena. Ahora se tiene que pagar por aún más cosas porque intentan costear todo el dinero que están perdiendo, nada más cobrándole más dinero a la gente, y ideológicamente hay demasiada gente metida ahí y demasiados intereses de por medio como para que se den cuenta tan fácil de que están perdiendo dinero, porque a su opinión están haciendo cambios significativos, y el trabajo y el activismo que están haciendo y la representación súper importante que están haciendo es a veces hasta más importante que el dinero que puedan estar perdiendo. Entonces, ahora sí no sé si un boicot serviría o no para Disney, pero pues es una tragedia porque es pues tan icónico en la vida de ahora sí todo el mundo, que pues es una pena y una desgracia que estén faltándole al respeto de tal manera a Walt Disney, y cuya visión era mucho más diferente y hasta eso aún más inclusiva que la que están tratando de mostrar ahora. Rápido, una vez más, de Jessica Ramírez: a lo mejor la Academia siga con su plan original de darle el Oscar a Carla Sofía y por eso Netflix volvió a darle su apoyo. Esperemos que no, ahora sí que esperemos que no, porque si gana, pues nada más va a confirmar lo que todos ya llevamos diciendo, lo que voy a decir en mi video, que espero que salga pronto, mañana, que solo lo están haciendo para pues darse palomitas, para seguir con una ideología y una narrativa que no refleja ni representa al resto del mundo, muestra aún más el desconecte que traen con su público en general y los que al final del día son los que les dan dinero y los que les dan su atención y lo más preciado que es su tiempo para ver pues reverendas estupideces en pantalla. Entonces, esperemos que no, esperemos que se lo den a Demi Moore, ahora sí que a cualquiera de las demás que están nominadas, y que aprendan que a la gente en general, y que no pueden tener estas, se les dicen sacred cows en inglés, pero vacas sagradas, y hacerles reverencias, porque a veces sale con que pues no tienen la opinión exacta o que no son las personas que crees que son, y se terminan una vez más como buenos progres, como buenos de izquierda, comiéndose los unos a los otros, y esto lo digo mucho porque no tienen valores fundamentales ni una moral que los una. Ok, ahora sí ya me voy. Buenas noches. Si van a salir hoy en la noche, por favor, tengan cuidado allá afuera. Cuídense mucho y nos vemos el lunes. Y esperemos que mañana en mi video de los Óscares, please véanlo, porque al último no le fue muy bien. Entonces nos ayudaría mucho. Pero buenas noches y muchas gracias. That was it.
Okay, we're over to the English version. Before we get started tonight, I'm going to say yesterday I noticed an echo, so we're trying to set a little bit more farther apart. And also I have the mic switcher here, so I can switch off one mic and before I start another. Hopefully that's going to fix the problem. It's a two-man band. She does all the camera switching.
I'm a woman.
Now I'm in charge of the sound switching, so we'll see how this goes tonight. But the first story was Vladimir Zelensky and President Trump met in the Oval Office. J.D. Vance was there, and all three of them had a super heated debate. And this may look like the beginning of the end as far as the United States pulling out of the Ukrainian conflict.
Can I talk now?
Yep.
Someone said yesterday it looked like we were angry at each other. We weren't. We always just debate and discuss like that. But we'll try to be nicer to each other from now on. But yes, let's get into it. I spoke about it in the Spanish version. I said that you know way more about this than I do, but that a lot of information is floating around there that is not 100% true.
Yeah, let's talk about if they wanted to continue this Ukrainian war, the Ukrainian people would have voted for Joe Biden, but they gave the popular vote to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was very clear on this. He was going to end the Ukrainian war. He wanted to end the Palestinian war. He's now de-escalated tensions with China as well. While Biden was in office, we had almost 5 wars pop off. So it was getting pretty intense. Now that Trump's in office, they had at least a temporary resolution in the Palestinian conflict. It looks like the Ukrainian war, he was coming close to a deal. Vladimir Zelensky does not want that deal, and he's being baited on by the Europeans to try to continue this war. I think the Europeans are going to come in and back Zelensky to continue the war, and they're going to try to use NATO doctrine to lure the United States back into it. I don't know if it's going to happen. I hope not. I hope this is the end for the United States. I never thought they should have been involved in the first place. So it's really just draining their economy, and they don't have the money to spend right now. So.
We did have a comment in English that I didn't read before as I was leaving. And Carlos Garcia says he's our friend from Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. He said, yo, out here in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, we got mad Russian and Ukrainian draft dodgers trying to hustle as English teachers. You already know what kind of English they be speaking. Stay up. Yeah, I bet you do. They're all but we also saw a bunch of them in Vancouver that just kind of popped up out of nowhere in Vancouver, Canada, when we were living there. So, I mean, you can continue talking about like the internal conflict, but we do see a lot of opinions, and in my opinion, some of them are kind of unfounded or don't have the full picture of why and how certain things happen, especially with this meeting, because as Colin Rugg says, here's a full 50-minute conversation between Trump and Zelensky. There are a lot of politicians claiming he was ambushed, Zelensky was ambushed. There was a full 40 minutes of dialogue before the fireworks started. And the president insisted throughout the first 40 minutes that he was focused on peace. Zelensky responded by strongly pushing back on a ceasefire with Russia and demanded that Putin pay for the entire war. J.D. Vance jumps in at the 40-minute mark to clarify the difference between Trump and Biden and their approach to the war. And this is what apparently ticked off Zelensky. So as I said before, if you haven't watched the full thing and you're interested and you think that there's some things out there that are not 100% true, or you think he was ambushed, I would say watch the full 40 minutes and 50 minutes and then form your own opinion about it.
Yeah, Zelensky's trying to play both sides of the coin there. He's trying to make mineral deals with France as well as the U.S. This was their best chance to get out of the war, was Donald Trump's negotiation. If Zelensky doesn't go back to Trump and ask for him to negotiate an end to this thing, it's not going to turn out well for Ukraine, because honestly, Canada and Europe just don't have the leverage to negotiate a solid end to this. Trump has the best opportunity for Ukraine to keep the most land. They are severely losing the war at this point, and they're running out of soldiers. Now is the best time to negotiate a deal for them. If they wait any longer, I really don't want to see what's going to happen. But J.D. Vance also was one of the first senators to come out against the funding in the Ukrainian war, and then Trump also was against this war, so we knew when they got in office that they were going to negotiate a deal. I'm surprised they've continued to fund and support Ukraine for this long. After today, I don't know what's going to happen. I truly expect Europe to really step in, and that's not going to end well, because Europe has used most of their weapons, and if they do put boots on the ground, Keir Starmer tried to get Trump agreed today that France and Britain were going to put troops in Ukraine, and they wanted the United States to backstop them, meaning if any French or British troops died, that the United States would come into war, and the United States said, no, they're not going to do that. But let's go on to the next story, unless you have anything else for this one.
Well, I was just quickly because I said it in Spanish, sort of, but I just reiterate that the original deal, I don't know if you said it already, but the original deal was between Biden and Zelensky, and it was suggested before.
Okay, so the original deal was actually brought up by Zelensky in the first year of the war. He brought it to Biden, saying they would give up these mineral rights in order to finance the war. Europe and America ended up just giving loans to Ukraine, with a handshake saying they would pay it back. What's going on now is Donald Trump is saying if you want us to continue to have somewhat of a security guarantee to protect our assets, which would be the minerals, then you're going to sign over these minerals and we'll use our technology to mine the minerals, because Ukraine doesn't have any mineral companies that can mine the minerals, and that they would split it 50-50. The original deal they cut with Trump was actually all the profits from these mineral mines would go to the U.S. until they would pay back from the war. They renegotiated that just a couple days ago to say they would actually split it 50-50 between Ukraine and the U.S., and the U.S. would be the one actually extracting the minerals. But going on to the next story here, we got former FBI Director James Comey has been running the Epstein case cover-up and is the reason for the ongoing hiding of the files. I got a little bit more information about this, and this was, if you don't know who James Comey is, he was the head of the FBI before Kash Patel took over during the Biden administration. His daughter is actually a prosecutor in New York State, and she's the one that prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell. So both her and her father had full access to these Epstein files, and now they're going missing. The Trump administration is claiming they're being hidden in the 9th District, which is New York, which would make sense because of the Ghislaine Maxwell case and because of the FBI headquarters there.
And I mean, we have speculated that there is some funny business behind the fact that the Epstein files took way longer to drop than they had promised. It was a campaign promise, and also Kash Patel kept saying they were going to come out. Pam Bondi kept saying that she had stacks of documents on her desk, and then it turned out that it was basically the same ones that they had already kind of released to the public through the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So where is the rest? Have they been completely compromised? Do they not exist anymore? Etc.
Yeah, well, Pam Bondi is the weak link in this chain because she claimed that she had thousands of documents on her desk and she was going to release them the next day, and then come to find out, did she not look at them? What happened? All of a sudden, there was a big nothing burger of a file that was released to alternative press, and nobody's impressed with what's been going on.
Mm-hmm. And it does look like, I mean, from Alex Jones here, kind of the same thread of opinion, saying Pam Bondi has no proof that disgraced former FBI Director James Brian Comey has been running the Epstein case cover-up and the ongoing hiding of the files. A major Trump administration showdown, according to him, with the deep state is about to climax in the coming days. So will this be a trigger for, some sort of shakeup within the Trump administration this early on in the game?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be looking at it. I'm keeping an eye on Pam Bondi after this, and I hope the American people really keep the pressure on the Trump administration. And this is the one good thing about the Trump administration. He's very sensitive to the base through social media and things like this, so he has changed opinions in the past, and he has pressured people to do things based on public opinion. So let's just go into the next story here, and I want to get this right when I say it, but the Canadian government is offering a 2S LGBTQIA plus resettlement program for the 2S LGBTQIA plus refugees from the United States.
And I mean, this is why I call it the alphabet community, the alphabet soup community. Even people from their own community end up saying that it's just the alphabet community, and it's getting ridiculous at this point. But we do see, we're dropping things. We're very professional over here at the Net and the Guy live. But we do see that this is coming from Viva Fry. Hold on, let me go back to There we go. So this is coming from Viva Fry, who, if you don't know him, he's a Canadian lawyer who also does a show alongside one of Guy's favorite lawyers in the world, favorite internet personalities in the world, but he's also a very good lawyer called Robert Barnes. He's a constitutional lawyer. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's called Viva Barnes. It's on the Viva Fry channel. But back to the story. And I have it here. Hold on. It does seem like they're focusing.
And I'm back.
They're focusing specifically on the community refugees and making special arrangements for them. And they can say that they're refugees solely based on perceived discrimination or persecution because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and sex characteristics, or SOGI-esque, because of course they have to make an acronym for everything, generally identified or referred to Canada by, be it the UN, the United Nations Refugee Agency, the Rainbow Railroad, other referral, etc. And they get government assistance, government programs, government help. And my question is, how do they know? Because it's not like we're stamped with whatever sexual orientation or gender identity we actually have or identify with. So how will they know if it is, someone from the community or someone pretending to be from the community and either buzz cutting their hair if they're a woman and saying, oh yes, I love going down on people, on women, or if it's a guy, like, do they just have to go like this and walk around and heel? Like, how will they know, and how do we know that people won't take advantage of these types of programs?
Well, I don't think they need to know. They if they vouch that they're part of that community, the Canadian government wants them in, especially with an election coming up. So they want to get as many refugees into the country, especially LGBTQ. The LGBTQ community in Canada has massive political power in not only companies, but in government. And if they can get more LGBTQ refugees, they can continue to funnel them into positions of power, because I don't think the current Canadian government does not want to see the dismantling of not only the LGBTQ community, but global liberalism within Canada. They don't want to see the dismantling like what happened in the United States.
And also the huge infrastructure that they've built around this community, and also the funneling of money that happens using, this is one of the ways. There's also the homelessness programs, et cetera, but the Alphabet community has been used as, a front to funnel money back and forth and all over the place.
Okay, let's go into the next story here. It's actually related to the last story, and this is the mass grave hoax is officially dead. No one would be held accountable. So if you don't know what the mass grave hoax is, this is one of the biggest mass media misinformation campaigns that has ever been done in the world, and it was done in Canada. It was done with the government and the media in cahoots with each other, and I'll let you explain it if you want.
Sure. So what happened is, if you don't know, because I'm sure there's people that are not from Canada on here tonight, Canada had a system called the residential school system, where children from, and I'm going to use... Okay, from the native children were sent to schools, and there was apparently a lot of bad things happening in these schools. And then I believe a few years ago, they used a radar to kind of scan around the schools, and they saw that there were things buried on the ground. And so they came to the conclusion right away that it must be children that were unalived by the residential school system. And it became this huge scandal, to the point where the government started investing money and giving out a lot of special privileges to First Nations communities.
Maybe I'll try to explain it a little bit better. There was Catholic schools decades ago that took in Native children, and those schools had later on been torn down or put into ruin, but people knew where they were. And very politically active groups, especially in the Indigenous community, went back and started using ground-penetrating radar. They said they had found something in the ground, and they claimed that it was the bodies of children, but they never unburied the bodies. They didn't have a single body, but for years and years and years, they claimed there was thousands of children buried in these residential schools that these residential schools had originally tried to cover up. This ends up not being the case. It ended up being different things that were buried in the ground that weren't even bodies. And to make these claims that there was thousands of kids unalived by the Canadian government was just a huge hoax, and it created a political uproar. They had complete support from the Trudeau government at the time. They actually ended up giving out billions of dollars. I'm not talking millions. I'm talking billions of dollars over this mass grave hoax. Okay.
And just going back to the article, because I think it explains it better than either of us did just now. What?
This is the third time, so make it quick.
Canada gives up trying to prove the mass graves hoax. Very quietly, the Canadian government has ended funding for a committee of experts formed to help Indigenous communities find unmarked graves at the former sites of religious residential schools. It marks the end of one of the most disgraceful moral panics in modern history. In 2021, the Tk'emlúps, I'm not going to say it, First Nation made an announcement that radar technology had discovered them. But after years and years and years of trying to keep up this hoax, again, as a way, in my opinion, to funnel money to the First Nations communities to get them to kind of do what they want and to go for their team instead of other teams.
Okay, the other thing I was going to say about this, actually just recently, now it's come out that this is primarily all a hoax, but the Canadian government was trying to pass a law that you can be arrested if you claim that this was a hoax just a few months ago. So the fact that now this is actually coming out and they're saying, well, it's not true, people can finally actually say this was a hoax without the worry of being arrested. Let's go into the next story here, and that is going to be Trump making English the official language of the U.S. through executive order.
Yes, so Trump is expected to sign order designating English as the official language of the U.S. The order will allow government agencies and organizations that receive federal funding to choose whether to continue to offer documents and services in language other than English, according to a fact sheet. Has been expected to sign the order today, but by tonight, the White House has not announced that it has been signed.
Yeah, and they're really just laying down the groundwork here of trying to claw back an American identity. Over the last few decades, they've been trying to get rid of the American identity, much how they did in Canada. They got rid of Canada Day in many cities around the country. So he's trying to make these executive orders by really carving out an identity for what America is and what it stands for.
And in case you didn't know, this executive order would rescind a mandate from former President, of course, Bill Clinton, that required the government and organizations that received federal funding to provide language assistance to non-English speakers. And the main takeaway from this is that by learning another language, the language of the country you're moving to, speaking directly here to Guy, you're helping yourself integrate and understand better the nuances of the community that sometimes go by kind of unnoticed if you don't fully want to integrate or become part of the community, which then rises up to tensions between different groups and ends up with enclaves of people from different places, basically just making it the exact same as where they were instead of trying to become a community in the new place where they are.
Okay, and going on to the next story, I heard you talking about this in Spanish because I heard her name even though I understood no other words, and that was Kathleen Kennedy out at Lucasfilms but not retiring, and will still be producing most likely Star Wars films, things that were already in the pipeline. Now, we reported that she was going to be retiring. Come to find out, alas, she's not retiring, but she is leaving Lucasfilms, so it's going to be very interesting what happens with the productions that are in the pipeline.
It's also still unclear if she's even leaving Lucasfilms itself. She claims she's not leaving anytime soon, and she will end her life making movies, or she will make movies until the end of her life. This is from that Park Place, and there's been speculation about it, but she gave an exclusive interview to Deadline saying that no, I am in fact not going anywhere. And this could mean not going anywhere from Lucasfilms or just not going anywhere from the industry in general, but we do know that a couple of reporters that were reporting on this story got into a bit of a tiff with each other by saying, no, it's true, no, it's not true, no. And now she's finally come out and said, somehow that she's not going to leave. And I think truly she's going to stay within Lucasfilm.
Okay, the rumors that I heard were completely different. Is she's 100% leaving Lucasfilm, but she's going to continue to produce Lucasfilm films, but not directly for the company as an independent. And it's a way to softly remove her from the company because there is a lot of backlash that she is there, but she doesn't want to leave. So I guess this is maybe the compromise. We'll have to see what happens. We can only really hope. The next story is related to this, and that's Disney sells out the Oscar ads, and not just for TV, but also for streaming platforms like Hulu.
Yes, so Disney sees sellout for Oscars ads, not just on TV. Oscars is not just a TV event for the company working to sell commercials that support it, with the annual awards show slated to stream live on Hulu for the first time alongside its regular broadcast on ABC, which is owned by Disney. Disney devised packages that took sponsorships well beyond the program itself. Ads tied to Oscar sales also include sponsorships of Good Morning America and Live with Kelly and Mark, and the following day with a bunch of different companies already buying in, and even an international deal that has Christian Dior sponsoring a flight of movies on Disney Plus, both in France and the US. And this again goes to show, and we got a comment in Spanish about this, about Disney floundering and losing money and not realizing it. This might just be a way for them to try to recoup as much money as they can in a very non-traditional way, because ad sales work very differently. They're usually slated, especially for big live events, slated just for those live events, and they're even produced specifically for the events.
Yeah, they have Conan O'Brien hosting the show this year, so he's a little bit more traditional and he's been out of the spotlight a little bit, so that could be good. But there is also a lot of controversy surrounding the Oscars this year with Emilia Perez as well as Conclave. So I am expecting big ratings, and I think advertisers are as well. So it's going to be interesting also to see what kind of ads are on there, because during the Super Bowl, it wasn't a bunch of woke ads. They really transitioned away from that.
Well, some of them were kind of woke during the Super Bowl, but it's also interesting that this is the first time that they're going to try to go with streaming and doing it on Hulu, which is also owned by Disney, part of the Disney platform. And we've seen how some of these live events on streaming don't always go according to plan, or they are not able to properly do it for everybody. I did mention that I'm releasing a video about the Oscars in Spanish and the whole mess that they've put themselves in by requiring certain things to be even nominated for an Oscar. You need to fulfill a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion guidelines that they've now put out.
Okay, and the next story is the FCC chief, Brandon Carr, wants to re-empower local TV stations and considers tightening regulations on social media giants, making sure they're allowed, making sure they're allowing free speech. So the type of regulations the Biden administration was putting in through the FCC on local TV and radio stations was to limit speech. The Trump administration is trying to expand and broaden free speech in media, especially with big tech giants.
Yes, and I mean this, hold on. I messed up the article. And this also probably shows a focus towards trying to even save the TV and like regular media industry, because they are in a lot of trouble. And the fact that they now want to expand the opportunities for more openness and free speech within the regular platforms, but at the same time asking social media platforms to regulate themselves a bit more, kind of shows steering back towards traditional media. We also talked yesterday about how just Fox News is having like a surge in ratings as well. That is traditional media at the end of the day. And they might be trying to save this huge, gigantic industry that they've built up over so many years and that was so powerful. And now they're, I think, threatened and scared by independent and online discourse.
Yeah, and the next story we had was the majority of small businesses are now using AI. I found this story a little bit interesting because I was just talking to a friend today about how to make graphs with AI for his research projects. But also, we use AI a little bit. I know we tried it out, especially for thumbnails, and we've now gone away from that. But the majority of small businesses within the U.S. are now using AI, so it's interesting.
Yes, and I think, I mean, there's a lot of hype around AI, but at the same time, I think it's not at the level publicly, like the public versions of AI, at the level that a lot of people and even the makers of these AI like be it Grok, ChatGPT, etc., would like it to be. I think there's still a lot of errors and mistakes going in there. But what would it mean for workers and people within these businesses, especially the smaller ones, if there's the threat also of AI? We saw the whole threat within the movie industry and how it might be a little unfounded and how it cannot replicate yet exactly what human beings are able to produce.
Okay, we'll go into the next one. Russia seizes products warning to Western firms hoping to come back into Russia with their westernized products. So because of the sanctions within Russia, a lot of, basically all the Western companies pulled out and these storefronts were left empty. So they were bought up by Russian business entrepreneurs like McDonald's and things like this. And they slightly altered the logo and things of this nature. And then they reopened as Russian-owned businesses. The West is now trying to get in there, especially American companies. They're trying to come back into that market because they believe Trump's going to start dropping sanctions. The Russian government is not so happy to have them back, and they're making it a little hard. So we'll see what happens with if the market does open back up in Russia. But I think they're happy having the majority of businesses owned by Russians in Russia. And I think that's what America wants as well. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, Russia has always been very protectionist and even has been called out for its level of protectionism. But now that they've kind of been isolated and forced to increase it even more and seeing some very beneficial returns on the imposed sanctions by other countries and kind of revitalizing their own industries and commerce, then they might not be as willing to let everybody back in after what they did to them.
Okay, and we'll go on to the next one. This was a pretty salacious story. Accused Mexican cartel boss Caro Quintero due in U.S. court after mass extradition. It's set to be a wild case. So when I was starting to read into this, it wasn't just him that was extradited. There was 28 people that were extradited to the U.S. to face charges. So this is, I think, stage one of the U.S. Mexican maybe cartel wars. We'll see what happens. Oh, I'm not supposed to say those words.
That's why I was making faces at you. But yeah, so the name is Caro Quintero. Once again, trying to learn Spanish. But yes, so this, I believe, is probably just a sign of goodwill towards like Trump, and please don't keep imposing tariffs on us. But it will be interesting now how much more can happen now that the kind of doors have been opened to actually doing something about this issue.
Yeah, and after that conversation with Zelensky, I'm sure the Mexican president and the Canadian prime minister are really watching how they negotiate going forward. He's not playing around with, if he's not willing to play around with Ukraine, he's not going to be willing to play around with these tariffs either. So it's going to be interesting what's negotiated in the future. Let's see, the next thing is GM's electric cars face critical test as Trump targets to eliminate EV subsidies. So this is huge. The EV industry was only profitable for these large car companies because they were being subsidized with discounts and things like this. The only car company that was actually profitable outside of China was Tesla. That was an electric car.
Yes, and we did see this big push from the U.S. and from a lot of other countries to try to make EVs happen. Stop trying to make EVs happen. It's not going to happen. But we see here that General Motors has spent billions over decades trying to blaze an electric trail, releasing pioneering EVs and hybrids that ultimately failed to achieve mass market sales before being scrapped. And this time they're saying it might be different. They might be trying to increase their output level and also trying to get people to buy the damn things. But I mean, EVs still cannot compete with, regular motors and just regular gas-powered cars. And so a lot of people are still worried about it. And because of the mass pushes and the subsidies by a lot of the governments, it was believed that it would become a much bigger and booming industry than it actually got to because of all the issues they still have.
Well, no, they are profitable in places like China, who who actually built the infrastructure. There was countries like Canada specifically who was mandating all electric vehicles but refused to build the infrastructure. The United States was the same. So they're mandating everybody have electric vehicles, but there's no way to actually charge these vehicles and travel around the country with these vehicles. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The one person that is going to really profit from this is going to be Tesla and the Tesla company. It had always been profitable, and he was against giving out subsidies in the first place because his company didn't need them. Now that the other companies don't have subsidies, I expect a lot of their EV divisions to either shrink in size or completely collapse, and all those sales are going to go back to Tesla. So it should be the one profitable EV company within the U.S.
Also in China and with the China EVs, and I know you're going to not agree with me in this, but I mean, they are not to the level, like there are a lot of issues with those cars coming out as well. And I see a lot of EVs from China in Mexico, and the regulations that they have to go through are not the same as gas-powered vehicles, be it here or in China. And I do think that there's still a risk to having EVs, but especially from China with who knows what kind of technology within them and what kind of power it could have.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on this one, because the thing with the Chinese EVs, they're so technologically superior to the American EVs that they just can't compete. And what do I mean by when they built the infrastructure? I'm not just talking about charging stations, because the US couldn't even build charging stations. China is 3 steps ahead on the technological front when it comes to EV cars. What they basically built were these little buildings that you would drive into, and it would lift up the car, take out the battery, put a new charged battery in, and then you would drive out the other side. And this would take all of just a few minutes. And so you wouldn't have to charge your car. A new battery would just be placed in, and it was removable.
And then again comes the question of what happens to those batteries after they're replaced. I mean, we know that the batteries that power EV cars are not the most environmentally friendly, nor is the way that they procure the resources to even make the damn things. And so it goes back to something we were talking about yesterday with the whole climate change green industry that actually sometimes pollutes way more than what we were doing before. And it was just a lack of planning and a lack of actually doing things properly. And I will continue to disagree about the Chinese thing, because I mean, I have the saying of if it's made in China, just expect it to be like everything else made in China, meaning they always make it look like it's great on the outside. It functions very well for the first few months or whatever, and it's this great innovation, but then it comes out that it actually breaks down or burns or explodes in the middle of the road. And I mean,
yeah, what I'm talking about, I do agree that EVs aren't very friendly for the environment, and it's hard to recycle the batteries. But when they replace the batteries in China, I'm really just talking, they take the one battery out, they put a new battery in, that battery they took out gets recharged and then put in the next car. So having EV cars that you can actually easily remove the batteries from the bottom, it's going to make it easier for recycling. It also makes it easier for swapping batteries out on cars. So I really do like that technology, and I think Tesla should bring something like that in. It is a great idea, and you should learn from your competitors. Let's go into the last story, though, and that is UK foreign aid minister quit because the USAID cuts because of their cuts. They basically, the UK foreign aid, the majority of their budget was coming from US foreign aid, which is kind of funny. But also, Prime Minister Keir Starmer said they're going to use what was remaining of the UK foreign aid budget and put it into the military, because Donald Trump is telling them they have to rebuild their military and meet a 5% quota of their national budget, I believe.
So yeah, the International Development Minister quits. The British minister responsible for international development quit in the wake of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's decision earlier this week to ramp up defense spending by slashing the foreign aid budget. And in a letter to Starmer, Annalise Dodds, I just wanted to get the name of the person, resigned as International Development Minister and Minister for Women. saying that there were no easy paths to increase defense spending, but that she disagreed with the decision to cut overseas aid, which she warned would only lead to China and Russia filling the vacuum. So it's more Russia-China scare.
Okay, and I think that's it for today. I actually got a whole new respect for you just having to switch these two buttons.
Yep.
I'm constantly distracted and I can't really focus on the stories, but I'll get better as we go along.
Yes.
You have about 10 buttons over there you're constantly pushing.
Well, I have the streaming program, and then checking if there's anybody talking. If the stream is still up, then I have to use this thing to switch cameras between us, and then make sure the articles are up and what article we're talking about. So yes, I'm very mighty and powerful and intelligent.
Mighty and powerful. True feminist.
No, you said that yesterday again. No. It's always funny when people call other people TERFs. At least for me, when I was doing stuff with Billboard Chris, who is against child transitions in Vancouver, people would come up to us and call us, yell at us, "You're such a TERF," and try to hit us, and people would spit on us when I was filming his interactions. But it's funny because I'm not radical, I'm not a feminist. I actually believe the feminists cause all these problems, all these trans problems in the first place by equating men with women. But yes, that was just... It's funny that people call me feminist and then not feminist.
Hopefully tomorrow we should have a video coming out about the Oscars, so keep an eye out for that. And if you are going to watch the Oscars on Sunday, this is a great video. It's not really reviewing what's going on with the Oscar movies. It's more reviewing on how the Oscars died or are DEIing.
Yeah, what has led the Oscars and the movies in general nowadays to try to completely dodge their own creativity and become just shows of virtue and virtue signaling, thanks to these parameters that they're forced to follow now.
And I think that's it for today.
Yes, hope you have a lovely Friday, and thank you for watching. If you got to the end, have a good night.